what a lot of people don't realize is it doesn't matter how much money you make, whether you work a 9 to 5, you are an executive at a tech company or executive at GM, or you're a pro athlete. It doesn't matter how much money you make. If you don't have financial literacy, inevitably you will go broke.
Welcome to the House Hacking Success Podcast, where you'll learn the path to free rent and financial freedom through real estate. Featuring your hosts, Brad Labrie and Drew Klingler.
What's up, everybody? Real quick before we start the show, if you go down to the description or the show notes for this podcast episode, there's a link, and that's going to send you to a page that you can download our free ebook on. This ebook is really good. Brad wrote it, and it covers everything that you need to know about house hacking in a very structured order so you can put all the pieces together. All right, enjoy the show.
Welcome to House Hacking Success. Today's show is an absolute thrill. We have Hakeem Valles here. And for anyone in Arizona, Detroit, or New York, you might recognize him. He played for the Lions, the Cardinals, and the Giants. Hakeem, thank you for joining the show.
Bradley, Drew, really appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely, man. And I have so much that I would love to ask you, but nothing comes to mind more than, it's well documented. And we talked a little about this before the show, but it's well documented that pro athletes go broke after they get done playing. And they spend enormous amounts of money while they're playing because they think that, their careers are going to go on forever, and not realizing that the average player only plays, 3.2 or whatever years it is, the average is, and they end up going broke. But you were the exact opposite. Tell me why that is and where that mindset came from.
I think it's multifaceted. It starts with exposure and education. I was exposed to real estate at a young age. And then when I made it to college, my degree was business with a concentration in real estate. And the girl I was dating at the time, her dad had a house flipping business and we flipped a whole bunch of houses. And going into the NFL already with that preconceived mindset that, with real estate eyes, what a lot of people don't realize is it doesn't matter how much money you make, whether you work a 9 to 5, you are an executive at a tech company or executive at GM, or you're a pro athlete. It doesn't matter how much money you make. If you don't have financial literacy, inevitably you will go broke. And when you look at statistically speaking, NFL players come from a low income, more of a lower income background because of being the top percentile of athlete in their class their entire life. Since they were 5 years old, they played a sport every season: baseball, basketball, football, whatever sport, 3 sports they played, throughout the years. High school came, summertime came around, they had summer travel league, AAU, all that type of stuff. College, because of NCAA rules, unless you were bending the rules like me, you weren't flipping houses. You had to, I was doing it while I was taking summer classes, while I was playing, used to make my classes at night. So in the morning, I could be up in North Jersey, knocking down walls, putting down floors. Yeah. But your average college athlete isn't getting that. So now you're in the NFL, you're 22, 23 years old. Another thing a lot of people don't realize is back to financial literacy. NFL players aren't paid 52 weeks out of the year. They're paid only 17 weeks. So you take a young 22, 23-year-old whose rookie minimum, my rookie year is $450,000. Instead of getting paid that over 52 weeks, you're now getting paid that over 17, and 450 divided by 17 is $26,000 a week. And when you give a young 22, 23-year-old that much money in a week, it's pretty easy to spend $10,000 a week and save 16. Week 1, make 26, spend 10. Week 2, make 26, spend 10. Week 3, make 26, spend 10. Week 17, make 26, spend 10. Now the off season starts, and you make 0, spend 10, but now you're also at home. So now you're with your friends. Now you're with your family. Now you're going on trips. Now you have time to travel and, unstructured free time in a sense. And now you have the spending habits of someone who makes $26,000 a week in a 52-week year. And in reality, you don't. But those spending habits become subconscious and psychological to a point where now what you see is a lot of guys, by the time we get back around, coming back for OTAs and minicamp, there's guys who, if they don't make the team, they can't pay their mortgage. If they don't make the team, they can't pay their car note. And it doesn't matter how much money you make, you're going to wind up living check to check, which 97% of America already does.
And, somebody that brought that to point while he was playing, Ryan Broyles, second-round pick out of Oklahoma from Detroit. He was we were actually friends with him, and he's within the real estate community. I'm sure you know that. But he used to speak to that a lot as well. And so let's plug your podcast coming out. Tell us the name of it, of course, and then kind of what you're hoping to do with that.
It's called Pro Athletes in Real Estate. And funny, Ryan Broyles is actually going to be a feature guest
Awesome.
on the show, which is exciting. Essentially, it's just, I'm trying to create a podcast by athletes for athletes, not just like let me, I don't know how to explain it. Like, not like look at us, we're pro athletes, this is what we're doing. Yeah. This is like pretending you're speaking to an audience of rookies right now.
Yeah.
Ryan Broyles, as I'm interviewing you, like that's the type of advice and type of person we're speaking to.
Yeah.
But trying to just create community, and just a whole bunch of value on the pro athlete side. And then as I'm comfortable deploying capital again and seeing where the right opportunities align, I'll build a solid network of other pro athletes alongside of me and other pro athletes that are also looking to get into the space as well.
I'm sure you're going to get a lot of non-pro athletes that love to listen to that podcast too and can learn from it, because it's a lot like what you said. Everyone's going to end up living paycheck to paycheck. So it really doesn't matter how much you make. It's how much you spend. And those mindsets are probably going to transfer over to someone like me who has a 9-to-5 and sits on the couch and watches football instead of plays it.
100%.
So let's transition into your background. Tell us about the house hacks you did, and after you flipped properties in college, but once you became a pro, kind of walk us through some of the deals you have done.
Yeah. So for me, I when I finished training, or while I was training, so this is 2015 of January 2015, kind of had an oh crap moment, because back when I was flipping houses, I was flipping with my ex-girlfriend's dad, but we had broken up. So that relationship had just completely ended. And I just had like a moment of like, man, if I don't make it to the league, like I'm going to be back at home on my couch. Cause like I went to boarding school for high school and then went to college. I was out of the house independent for the past 9 years, but it was like everything was a reality of like, it's either NFL or go home. Like there's really no in between. I'm putting all my eggs in this basket, just paused my MBA at the time. And that was when I found out about the platform Bigger Pockets and started educating myself on real estate just heavily, and found out about the house hacking method and really decided, whatever city I make it to in the NFL, I'm doing real estate. And if I don't make it to the NFL, I'm probably going to figure out ways to bootstrap and do no money, low money down methods of getting into real estate. And made it to the Arizona Cardinals. It was like, perfect. It's a great market. But quickly realized, so this is April, we don't get paid until September. So I was like, all right, I just need to make this team and put my head down for a little bit. And once got out to Phoenix, I was paying $2,000 a month for a month-to-month apartment. And I witnessed my little brother, who's also an NFL player. He was playing for the Oakland Raiders at one time and got pretty much traded from the Raiders to the Bills like overnight, but was still locked into another 6 months on a $3,000 a month lease in Oakland, California, no, San Francisco, California. And it was just like $18,000 just going to air with an empty apartment. And I'm like, one, I can't let that happen. So the first way I mitigated that was getting a month-to-month lease, which obviously made it more expensive at $2,000 a month. But then I still did the math. I'm like, it's $24,000. It's going straight to air. And as soon as that rookie season ended, January 1st came around, put out a post on like the Bigger Pockets threads, trying to network and meet other multifamily / house hacking investors in the Phoenix, Tempe area, and took all of them out to coffee. About 40 of them kind of got back to me, and found an investor / realtor who pretty much showed me the ropes. We underwrote hundreds of properties, and then finally found a fourplex that was, I sacrificed. I had a 50-minute commute every single day to my practice facility when I played for the Cardinals, and had Section 8 tenants living in the same building as me. But I found a 268,000 4-unit apartment in North Phoenix and house hacked it.
That's awesome. How did you finance that deal?
So for that one, we used the FHA loan. Was able to I put a little bit more than 3.5% down. Just running the numbers, it just made more sense. So I could actually cash flow while I was living there. So I put down like maybe 4%. Like my total down payment after everything was like 13 grand. It was FHA loan. Then I'm sure everyone on the show knows this, but you can buy it up to 4 units with as little as 3.5% down. And it's not you're not going to be able to buy any property. It's there's limited assets that you can buy under FHA, but there's a property always within 2 of most people's radius. It depends on what are you willing to sacrifice in terms of your commute, in terms of getting into real estate.
So before we get into that, because it sounds like your whole story, it revolves around sacrifice and your ability to do that for the greater good of yourself and your financial literacy and just all of that. But for those curious, and that's probably mostly me, how was it to get financing as a rookie in the NFL?
It wasn't that bad. I didn't have 2 years of W-2 because I didn't have a job in college and all that. It helped having an NFL contract. Playing, I already played a season, so I had 6 figures in the bank, which helped, and then also had a contract through the next season, and like that was on paper signed.
Cool.
That essentially they wanted to see everything and proof of finances, proof of future finances, and having enough of a nest egg and being able, I think, pay at least a year or maybe 18 months of the mortgage, like in your bank account. And that made them comfortable. But it was only it was a 30-day process of they wanted something new every single day. Like the mortgage company called every single day for this bill, that bill. Can you the GM to send or sign, the assistant, someone in the finance department to sign this or do this. But as long as you're compliant to all the things they asked for, it was about a 30-day process of BS, and then another 30 days to close.
With the question of sacrifice, I have a little bit of a theory. I played in college. We have a lot of listeners that played in college. And there's sort of a atmosphere of sacrifice, specifically in football. We sacrifice our whole lives. I know, like in college, we put off some of the nightlife to put in extra work in the gym and catching balls, and we're doing it all year round. And things of that nature. Do you think that helped you a little bit in a lot of the sacrifice that you made?
100%. I mean, I think there's two types of guys. There's the guys who sacrifice and the guys who don't. And there's the guys who sacrifice when people are watching, in a sense. This is actually just putting in the work, like in those quiet hours. Like I think it is exactly what you said. It is. I think of a funny story I always think about in college, that it's like it's such a small sacrifice that, like, it's not even a sacrifice. I don't know what you call it, but there was. Have you ever partied at like Penn State before?
No, I have not.
So Penn State has Arts Fest. I don't know when it is every year, but we went there like twice, and because we had some friends who went there.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, we were all carpooling, and I was driving. Like 5 or 6 of us were going. But back to catching balls, I just moved to tight end, and like I was trying to catch like hundreds of balls a day. But like I held up the carpool because I had to get my hands in. And all is that, like, even like making it to the league, but like sacrifice, I think, comes in a lot of different ways. But a quote that always stuck with me was sacrifice who you are for who you want to be. And I think that's what it ultimately, came down to from a football standpoint, and then also from I think it's a strong parallel, and I think a lot of athletes should definitely tap back in to those sacrifices that we've made in our own sports and like our own lives. Except it's like you did that for a team and for like a coach and for like a program. Like, are you going to show up for yourself?
Let's talk specifically about, you had mentioned before you had a used vehicle, and I forget the make and model you had, but I mean, I can only imagine the kind of sacrifice that would be, and probably a lot of your teammates were probably making fun of you because there is an atmosphere of high spending, like you said, within the league and just in general, even people with a normal 9 to 5. I mean, if you get in with a company and you make it up to a certain level, I mean, there's just sort of a atmosphere of, if you make a little money, you got to go spend it right away, and you got to go get a new car. Talk about that. Like what because the savings rate is so important, and a lot of times vehicles are some of the biggest drainers on that.
100%. So I finesse. I'm a big finesser, like in like an interesting way. Like I actually have a Chevy Camaro, and like I wrapped it in matte black, so it looks dope. Like it looks like a Batmobile.
Yeah.
But I paid $13,000 for it, like all cash, and like it like people look at it and like, oh my god, I'm like, honestly, I bought it all cash. It's cheaper than your car, probably half the price of your car, and you work at Staples, like,
Yeah.
And it you know, my thesis is buy used cars in your 20s that you can afford to buy with all cash, and like that should be the rule. Like until you're in your 30s and you got a family and all that type of stuff, you got to worry about safety for your car and all that type of stuff. Understandable. While you're in your 20s and you're single and all that type of stuff, like I don't think like you can't afford it if you can't buy it in all cash, in my opinion. One man's opinion. But it's like you buy a used car and you can still like I bought it for I'm gonna sell it I'm selling it right now because it hurts my back because my knees are like higher than my butt, like when I'm sitting down. But I'll be able to get anywhere from 9,000-10,000 for it. Like the price may have depreciated 3-4 grand, but had that car since 2016, and the paint is fresh because there was a matte black wrap on it, so there's like all white paint under it. And but used cars are important, like people, man. And I'm not one to look or pocket watch is like a term we used to say growing up. Like don't watch or talk about what's going on in another man or woman's pockets. But at the end of the day, man, there's so much more you could do with that money versus like, and you're financing it on top of it. Like, it's like, come on, like, but it's back to education and exposure. Yeah. What have you been exposed to in terms of, have you seen opportunities that you can get into with $13,000, $15,000, $20,000 and know what you can actually, like, most people don't know what they could do with $20,000. Most people see $20,000. First thought is to go on a trip or buy something.
It's so refreshing to hear, that come from an athlete, someone that was exposed to that sort of lifestyle and still, understand. I mean, we talked about it on our last podcast, the fact that I think there's a lot of, most people don't realize that for $13,000, you can buy a $270,000 fourplex, in 50 minutes away from, Cardinal Stadium. It's just, for whatever reason, people aren't exposed to that or don't realize it. And they think they got to bring 20,000 or 20% down to that fourplex. And you can literally move into that for, very little down.
Fortunately, like, no one at a young age, unless you're exposed to it, like you said, you're going to have no clue about any of that stuff, right? What most people are exposed to is buying the nice car and buying the nice clothes and the biggest house and the nice watches and all that stuff. I mean, that's all over the media. It's all over social media and all that. I mean, that's the biggest exposure. And unfortunately, we aren't necessarily, or most people aren't taught that at a young age when they should be taught, how you should handle money. For me, it took until my early 20s. And then even then, it was like I had to take some courses. I had to find people that had the same mindsets. I had to do a lot of self-education just to even get there.
That's real.
So you've done a lot of real estate deals, and we know you have some business ventures too, and I'd love to talk about those, but maybe we can talk about some real estate deals. And is there any specific real estate deals that you've done or any purchases that you made that really stood out to you that you want to share your experience on?
Honestly, the biggest experience, and it's been a long process, but it's a different industry, but it's a real estate play for us, and all my partners are real estate guys. Back when I was with the Lions, we bought a 40-acre parcel in Pinconning, Michigan, so about 2 hours north of Metro Detroit. Bought it for $500,000, hedging that cannabis was going to go recreational back in November of 2018, which was going to be about like 9 or 10 months later. And when it did go rec, we got an offer for $7 million on that same parcel of land. And instead of cashing out, we realized the leverage we had in terms of it's about the largest parcel of land in the state that is zoned to stack unlimited Class C licenses for the cultivation side of the cannabis space. So these last 2.5 years, we've spent meeting with and touring the facilities of some of the best growers in the country to enter strategic partnerships with them and take 50% of their business and allow them to grow on our land. So it's been an exciting, but it's been a development project. So we've just got financed by a hedge fund company out of New York, gave us about a $19 million valuation to fund our first construction of this first warehouse, and essentially continue to work with them along the process because we have the capacity to put 42 of them on there.
I can absolutely see why, hedge funds and a lot of people are attracted to you, because your entire story revolves around like delayed gratification. How many people would, and obviously you have these partners that think like-minded like you as well. I mean, how often do people, take the very first thing when money comes their way? Like how many people would be able to delay that kind of a return on your investment, $7 million, where you looked at that and said, well, if it's worth 7 today, just imagine what we can do. Instead of selling it, let's see how we can bring some of the top cannabis producers in the country together and take a portion of their company to use our, obviously great strategic investment that we've made. And it just over and over and over, I can see that within your life, that you've cultivated this mindset of delayed gratification, and that's something that I relate to. And part of the reason that I think is just, I mean, that's why I'm such a huge, obviously, fan of football and sports, is just if you take it the right way and you get yourself in the right community. I mean, that's literally what they preach all the time. We're practicing and working in the gym in April, May, June to be able to put on, our shoulder pads in August, September, October. And we're just constantly, cultivating that mindset of delayed gratification and sacrifice. And
That's
those
real.
who work the hardest, reap the rewards later. And if you actually take that concept and apply it to real life, like real estate and investing and those concepts, if you can take those sports analogies and relate it to life, I mean, those are the ones that really, really win, just like you.
100. I couldn't agree more with the delayed gratification. One thing we used to say in the NFL is it's 9 months of work for 16 Sundays, or 32 hours, essentially 9 months of work for 32 hours of output. And it's like, I mean, from a real estate standpoint, yeah, man, delayed gratification comes in many ways. It comes in buying the used car over the expensive car, because now on that rainy day, when that investment opportunity comes across your desk, you're liquid enough to actually fire, versus not, because you spent it on jewelry, you spent it on a car, you spent it on a condo that is in a different city that you don't even live in, that you're not even Airbnb in, right? Like it's a lot. But when you put things and think about things in the grand scheme, and I mean, I just think of things as like, I'm a minimalist already, so I don't need much. But being able to, fire at the right opportunities, it's one of the reasons why I've pivoted into my media company, to stay cash heavy when there's blood in the streets from a real estate standpoint. The market's still hot right now. And I'm just not comfortable in tactics right now from a real estate standpoint. What I know what to do is just to make money. So I'm ready to actually fire when the banks aren't lending. And I've got a nest egg of X amount to start.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your second house hack, because I don't know if it's Detroit or New York, but you said that after Arizona, you had bought another house hack when you had went to another team. Was that in Detroit or was that in New York?
In Detroit. So it was actually in Allen Park. So I'm right. Do you know where the Krispy Kreme is in Allen Park?
I do.
I literally could see it from my living room. So
nice.
Very simple, humble neighborhood, as I'm sure you know. They have a bunch of duplexes there, like 2-level duplexes. And I bought a duplex, bought it with conventional financing, had to put, I think, $20,000 down. But my mortgage was $1,000 a month after that $20,000 down, and lived in one side, and the market rent there would have been less than $1,000. But if I Airbnb'd it, it brought in $1,800 to $2,000 a month. There's a lot of longer, like 2-week, 3-week type of tenants that would come in there. But Airbnb'd it while I was playing for the Lions, the year and a half until I had my daughter. Once I had my daughter, I kind of used upstairs for my office and kind of cleared out upstairs. But yeah, that was a sweet house hack. It was not low money down opportunity, but $20,000 down, in like a quiet small neighborhood for, it was like a $120,000 property. But yeah, live for free, live 10 minutes away from the facility.
Yeah, and you guys actually practice in Allen Park rather than Ford Field, right?
Yeah. We practice actually about 8 minutes away. Funny enough, I got the quick Lions story. The day I got cut from the Lions, I used to cut it close sometimes, because I'm 2 months, 3 months into being a dad, so like barely sleeping at all. And I used to leave, like, I knew my drive took about 8 minutes to get there. I'd leave about 11 minutes before like the first meeting. And I mean, you're getting fined about $2,600, I think, a minute that you're late to a meeting. And there was construction on Southfield. And I was like just put on Waze and just started flying through the back streets. And I get pulled over like right outside of the facility. I'm like, let the guy know, like, I'm late. Like, can you just let me? Like, let me go. And I go in there, and every team has a Grim Reaper. He's like a guy that if you see him, you know you're about to get cut. Like somebody's getting cut. Like that's the only reason why he's around. And he's waiting at the door. And I'm like, he can only be for me. I was like, come on, there's. And that was my last day in Detroit.
So tell us about that. I'm sure people would be intrigued. I mean, there's obviously a lot of motion with a situation like that. What was that like?
That was awesome because I'll tell you, my first cut was a lot more emotional. The Detroit cut was awesome because it was, one, it felt like freedom. I wasn't happy with the situation in Detroit at the time. But two, I hadn't got to spend Thanksgiving with my family for a minute because of football.
Yeah, we put Detroit plays on Thanksgiving.
Even with Arizona, like it's hard to go home for a day. Like when you're living in Arizona, that's a long flight. A lot of, what are you calling it? Plus having practice the day before and then the day after, like on a Thanksgiving. And then when you're in college, same thing. When you're playing college football, it's just a lot to actually have a real Thanksgiving in that sense. And it was the week before Thanksgiving game. And I was like, perfect. I literally got an Airbnb up in like, because my duplex wouldn't fit everyone because it's a very small duplex. Got an Airbnb up in West Bloomfield, I think. And had my whole family come out, got like a Sprinter van, and we had like a real Thanksgiving, like on one of the lakes up in Bloomfield. So it was awesome, honestly, for me. And then it was like, boom, 2 weeks later, I'm getting signed to the Giants, and I get a lot more help with my baby because my family's originally from Jersey, from South Jersey.
Yep.
So it was actually kind of nice. But my first time I got cut was super emotional. Not emotional. It was just a lot happening in my life at that time. So like that time, like the mother of my child and I, we had a miscarriage like the day after the Hall of Fame game. The Cardinals, we played the Cowboys next day. Me and the mother of my child, we had our first trimester appointment and we had a miscarriage. And like that was super rough going through camp with that. And then on top of that, in my fourplex, I had a tenant so I decided to, going against what they say is to get a property manager, act like you don't live there. My tenants knew who I was, knew I lived there, and I was just like myself essentially. I didn't want to hide who I was, like trying to be bold essentially. And I had a tenant who I was doing, you guys are familiar with cash for keys?
Yeah.
Like instead of a fig, I was, doing cash for keys, and the week she was supposed to move out, she like attempted to kill herself. And her daughter like reached out to me like saying like, my mother's at the hospital. I know she has to move out. Like I'm going to help move out, blah, 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 blah. So I had the mother of my child help her daughter move her stuff out. And while she's moving her stuff out and like looking through the unit, it is destroyed. Like she was a drug addict, had a bunch of squatters living in there, had a dog I didn't even know about. The squatters locked the dog like in the back bedroom, and the dog kept pooping in there. And they slid a candle in there. The dog knocked it over. Dog runs out of the room. Room caught on fire. Did not know about any of this. They must have put out the fire. And all this is happening, mind you. I just got cut from the Cardinals. Went home to St. Louis to my mother of my child was having surgery from the miscarriage. Like just had it. Like it was in recovery. Got home at 10 o'clock at night. Next morning, wake up to 10 calls from my agent. You're going to Detroit. And like in Detroit, now dealing with these phone calls from Arizona about all this madness going on at the property, the emotional trauma that just came along with the miscarriage, on top of moving to a new city, having to learn a completely new playbook and social dynamics of going to a new football team. Isn't like, I mean, you play college football. It's like stepping into a new locker it's a lot.
Yeah.
And that was heavy, to be honest with you.
I bet. So with those two deals, you got a fourplex in Arizona, duplex in Detroit. I believe you had mentioned that you just got done selling the fourplex. Do you own either one of those two still?
No, I sold the fourplex in July. That's a good thing about having assets is, when there's a pandemic or you want to hire people or whatever you want to do with whatever, assets carry weight. And I think right now is the peak of the market. I couldn't believe I got the offer, what I got for it. So it was like a no-brainer to sell it. I was planning on actually selling it pre-pandemic. And when it came around, I was like, oh, no one's going to buy anything right now.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I get a call from my agent. I was like, hey, I got this guy with a 1031. You might want to put your property on the market and check out this offer. And I was like, all right, put it on the market, get like 15 backup offers. And I was just like, oh my gosh, yeah, we're getting rid of this. Cause I can't believe these people are about to buy this. But then my duplex, interestingly enough, I'm actually going through a lawsuit on the previous owner of the property, because I, like, right before I was moving out of Detroit, started to have issues like with the plumbing, and got the line snaked out to the backyard, and like 14 feet deep, there's a pipe that's kind of like slid off of each other, and the previous owner hit it like in the backyard. All like you know, you take the detector out for the snake to kind of find where it's at. Right when we found where it's at, you touch the ground and it's fake grass and like a whole thing of rocks, because the ground divots in like this because of that pipe being off. But it wasn't mentioned in the seller's disclosures. It wasn't mentioned in the seller's disclosure when they sold the property. So, and it still was in the statute of limitations for state of Michigan. But long story short, when I moved, I couldn't get a rental certificate because of that. So I couldn't have a property manager manage the property. So it's just like, now I'm suing for mortgage and potential rent that I couldn't have gotten these past months.
Right. So, something
nightmare of a process, but
something I stress that I'm an agent, real estate agent, and something I stress that literally every single client I have is to get a sewer scope during your inspection period, because I've helped just this summer. I've helped a few people house hack in Lincoln Park and Allen Park. Lincoln Park's not too far from where you are, and Allen Park notoriously has sewer backups and has a lot of sewer problems, right? And I have people that I just had come to me and said, hey, this had happened to me, and I'm like, man, listen, I mean, you go through the legal process, but not all the time does it go in your favor. I'm like, dude, for $125, we can get, whatever it is. I mean, to me, it is the absolute best investment you can ever make, because the amount of money it takes to, to get those things fixed. How much? Yeah.
It's gonna be somewhere around that, and you don't even know what the bonds and stuff are gonna cost. And we got to take down the neighbor's fence to get a truck down there, because they have to dig 15 feet deep, and there's like wires that like hang really low in the back. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the process at the end of the day.
For sure, man. Yeah. So if anyone's listening out there right now, absolutely, if you have city sewer, get it scoped, figure it out. Even if there's an issue, that's not the end of the world. You can decide that, hey, paying 10, 15, whatever it's going to cost, $1,000. Well, let's address this up front. Let's either get the sellers to take care of it or have them drop the price. That's what happened on a property in Berkeley. No one knew about it. We got it scoped. Of course, it came back about $12,000 to do it. The seller ended up dropping the price to do it just to get it done. And so, you could figure those situations out, but to have that conversation up front, figure it out. It's like $150 to get a respectable company to come out there and throw a camera down that drain. Absolutely do it.
100%. Learning experience, to say the least.
Sure.
So you're not 100% real estate. You have a lot of businesses that you own. You're very entrepreneurial. One of my favorite stories that I've seen it on TikTok. You're talking about how you started repairing cell phones, and you learned to do that by just taking apart your phone, putting it back together over and over and over. And I love that story. I mean, it shows just one determination, and you can, if you're going to practice something, you can create a business out of it. Could you maybe expand on that story and then talk a little bit more about other businesses that you're running?
Absolutely. So that happened. That story has actually a part 2 to it that's even more interesting than the first story. So when I was finishing up high school, summer going into college, my little brother cracked his iPhone 4 for like the 10th time. And my dad was like, I'm not paying to get it fixed again. Like, we don't have to deal with having a cracked phone. Like, that's just that. And I was just like, so this is 2011. So this is like the peak of the YouTube tutorial era where like anything you want to learn how to do, you just go to YouTube and there's a video.
Greatest website ever.
And I was like, I just saw like a how-to on something else like the other day, like right before that, I'm like, there's got to be a YouTube video on how to fix his phone. And I was just curious. I'm like, let me check it out. I was like, oh my God, there is a YouTube video. I was like, let me go on Amazon and see if they actually have those screens there and see how much they cost. Go on Amazon. It's like $30. This is pre-Amazon Prime era. So order the screen, have to wait like a week and a half for like the screen to come in, and keep watching the video. Screen comes in. Like, I'm excited. I'm like, check it out. It takes me a solid six hours to take his phone apart and put it back together. But when I pressed the lock button at the end of it, it worked. And I was just like, oh snap. And like instantly, like my entrepreneur light went off, and I like literally took my phone out of my pocket at that moment, took it apart, put it back together over and over and over and over and over again till I could do it from 6 hours to 20 minutes. And then when I showed up on campus, like literally Monmouth University freshman, I was the iPhone repair guy. Like the kiosks at the mall were charging $80, $100. I was charging $60. And you didn't have to drive to the mall. I would just come to your dorm room or come to your house because I had a car on campus and literally fix 3, 4, 5 phones a day. Then it got to the point where I thought for some reason it would harm the environment if I threw this cracked screens in the trash. I just never did. I just had like a big like bag or box of just like a whole bunch of screens. And I just one day, like it was getting overwhelming. Like it was just way too much, taking up way too much space. And I'm like, let me just Google what I could do with these screens, just curious, just out of curiosity. And there's this company in Alabama that will buy my cracked screens from me for $5 a screen. It's like a recycling company. I'm like, get out of here. And I'm a solid year and a half in I'm a solid year and a half into fixing phones. Like I had a lot of screens and ship them out, and they actually pay me. And I'm like, there's no way that they just paid me this for all these cracked screens. And then I'm like, how many of these other iPhone repair stores know about this? And are they getting paid for their screens? And I literally go 30-mile radius of my school, go to every single not Apple store, every like independent kiosk, every independent We Fix iPhone shop, and literally negotiate buying their screens for anything under $5. I try and get $250 was like my starting point on buying their cracked screens, and then literally had a pickup date for like all their spots, go and pick up their phones, go back to my dorm room, box them up, ship them off to this company for Alabama for $5 a screen. I made thousands of dollars doing that.
Man, that is amazing. So let's harness that, and let's talk to everyone out there listening right now that has not necessarily done their first deal. And generally speaking, most people's first barrier to entry is down payment, or maybe they have, limiting belief that maybe they haven't been involved with real estate, like they didn't grow up with it. They generally don't think of themselves as someone that could be an investor or do house hacking. They just have a little bit of a limiting belief. Talk about, down payment is always the number one thing that people say, oh man, I can't save up for that. Talk about the side hustles, there where there's a will, there's a way, and just speak to somebody right now, who maybe has that limiting belief on just putting into work to go buy cracked screens, and make, 100% markup on what you buy it from AT&T and Verizon and whoever, all the other repair stores that haven't figured out this $5, or all the other, garage sailing, going to garage sales, do the exact same thing like Gary Vee preaches, or, just all these other, there's so many things out there now that, a lot of people are working from home, or, there's just so much out there. Speak to somebody out there.
I'm going to go grab something to show an example.
Absolutely.
See, I think it takes a lot of hustle and like hard work, but it takes a level of DNA and action that you can't teach. You can't show. Like I have no reason doing this or buying this, but it's in my, it's just in my blood that hearing a side conversation that these little chips right here, Packy one chip hot chip challenge, are going for anywhere from $19 to $30 right now on eBay. But at Huck's gas stations here in Missouri, they're going for $6. So literally, I bought 2 of them. So literally just bought them. So I'm going to throw them on eBay, making sure I can get what I can get for them. And then I'm going to put the whole store out and literally flip them on eBay just because that excites me. But I think small things like that, like, I mean, that's if there's anyone out there, check your local Hucks, see if those Packy chips are anywhere from $6 to $10 because you'll be able to at least make 100% on those. But like, yeah, it's about also what Gary Vee says and he preaches is micro speed and macro patience. Like, if you're broke right now, you don't have the audacity to think that you should be in a deal tomorrow. Like, you have to be patient. But in the micro, you need to be on fire. Like your face is on fire, like working your tail off, trying to figure out different grinds, different hustles, knowing that if you go to Marshall's or TJ Maxx and look at the cleat section, you'll be able to find some cleats there for like $24 to $30 that you can then flip for about $42 to $44 all day, like all day. But like, that's going to take patience. You're going to make $1 million overnight doing that. But you can make a solid, like, there's a bunch of different deals that are just like that. But are you willing to spend 4 hours walking through TJ Maxx, the thrift store, Marshall's with your eBay completed sold items and literally just searching everything there, seeing what they're actually going for and how recent they just sold for on eBay, and then going, okay, I've got $300. How are we going to turn this 300 to 1,000, that 1,000 to 10,000, that 10 to 20, and then now get into some deals.
And I'm gonna tell you right now, I predict right now that you're gonna be #1 in podcasts on Apple Podcasts one day. You know, in the business section, maybe even altogether, because your story it's so cool. You have such an amazing mindset, and you know, that's what we try to preach all the time to people. Is just like, listen, micro speed, macro vision. Is that what it is?
Micro speed, macro patience.
Patience, yeah. You know, it's so true. You know, like you and I, and Drew as well. You know, driving our beater vehicles for the first several years and pinching pennies on certain things that most people, you know, like, I mean, I had a cracked screen for a long time and I refused to upgrade my phone because I was like, man, like, yeah, I got the money, but like, I have big dreams. Like, I want to be able to buy a house.
It's so funny you say that. I got to show my dad this clip because I always, as an iPhone repairman, I used to get so much crap because I always had a cracked screen. I'm not paying for a crack. I don't care. I'm
These little things that are marketed to us as like, you know, staples of our of being a successful person or having money. You know, Gucci belts and the new iPhone and, you know, the Mercedes Benz or you know, the vehicle or you know, vacations. Like, all these things are cool in their time. Like Gary Vee, like I you know, it's been a while since, but I used to really be into Gary Vee podcasts. I just don't have the time anymore. But like he used to always say, like, they all have their place. Like, you know, don't not take vacations in your life, but like maybe not take them when you're 22 years old and your goal is to become like, you know, an entrepreneur at a high level. Like, you're going to have to, you know, work 16-hour days and sleep just a little bit and, you know, and just grind for a while, you know, to then have that ability in the future.
I think we need to match the audacity of our dreams and ambitions, like, with our work ethic. And most people don't do that. I think it's awesome you say that you haven't listened to Gary Vee in a while, because I feel like you need Gary Vee, you need him, and it's like, you're going. He
says that.
He gives you that perspective tweak. He's like, you don't, like, if you're doing it, you shouldn't even be here. You shouldn't even be at this conference or listening to me right now. Like, it's another just quick piece of advice. Everyone out there who's listening who doesn't have money, every single person has $1,000 worth of stuff in their house that can be sold that they don't need. Every single person, damn near. Maybe there's a couple who don't, but besides that, most people do. And like, start with that 1,000 and start flipping.
Yeah. And like right here, you know, we all basically have a phone, and no matter what your skill is, you know, you go on Fiverr.com and you can, you know, go, whatever your talent is, like Drew, you know, being in IT, you know, he can go out there and he can get, you know, $2,500 gigs doing whatever it is, you know, and just doing going to garage sales, buying stuff from your local dollar store that, you know, on eBay, will sell for, you know, 100% markup up there, you know, whatever it is, raking. I mean, right here, you know, fall in Michigan, there's leaves everywhere, going out and raking leaves. You know,
I couldn't wait until it would snow when I was in college. Like, literally go to Lowe's, $8, get a shovel, me and my boys, boom, literally spend the whole day, make $400, $500, $600, $700, $800. Like, when it starts snowing, there's no excuse. No excuse. But there is excuses.
the only way that I was able to build up the down payments for my first couple houses. And by the way, you know, for people that don't know my backstory, my very first house when I was 21 years old, I lost every penny I had into it. You know, at the time, I mean, it was more than 10,000. I don't know the exact dollar, but it was well over $10,000. And to me, I mean, that was like $1 million. I mean, $10,000 to 21-year-olds, you know, a little bit of money. And my tenant got murdered. We had a national crisis, and like just this great storm. I lost the place. And, you know, but from there, I mean, I just started side hustling. You know, I mean, I made a little bit of money in my job, but not enough to like build a down payment. I used to do, I was in construction in college. So I started I was doing roofing projects, started out small and just, you know, work my way up, build clientele. I was, you know, raking leaves. I was cutting grass, you know, I was just doing whatever I could to make a little bit of money. And I started saving up the money, started flipping houses like you did, you know, and then same thing. I read one of Brandon Turner's book, figured out you could use the 203K to house hack. And I'm like, boom, light bulb. All right, let's go do a massive rehab and let the bank pay for it. You know, like if you just hustle, like the light bulb moments will come to you. Like you hustle, you listen to a little Gary V, you know, you sprinkle in a little bit of Hakeem's podcast. Like you're going to figure out these moments, you know, like those moments will come to you, but you got to put in the work first, because if you're sitting on your couch, you know, watching, you know, whatever shows and playing you know, the new PS5, which, you know, nothing wrong with playing video games, but like if that's all you're doing, those light bulb moments are not going to come to you.
That's real. Yeah, I haven't had a game system since 7th grade, and
Yeah,
I don't have cable. I just got Hulu finally, so I can watch some sports. Like they got me on that ad. Hulu has live sports. Like they got me. But yeah, it's back to what I said. You got to match that the audacity of your dreams and ambitions with your worth ethic, because if you got excuses or anything, it's like I don't even want to hear it. You know what I mean?
I'll never forget, man. Just a quick side story. My very first flip, I was doing all the work myself, and it was a huge deal. You know, it took me about 8 months to get this whole flip done, and you know, made good profit, whatever. But about the middle of it, it was during football season, and of course, I'm a huge fan, and so I got NFL all access and NFL game day pass, I think it was what it was called, and you know, I had DirecTV or whatever I had. And, you know, and all day Sunday and even during the week, all I was doing was watching football and, you know, whatever else I was watching on TV. And I'm like halfway through this, and I have this moment where I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I'm just wasting this time. Of course, I like football, but like, it's not contributing. Nothing wrong with football, but just like for what I wanted to do, like it was not contributing at all. So I end up having to pay like $200 or $300 to cancel my service early. But I was like, this $200, I looked at it as an investment. I was like, this $200 investment in myself to not spend, you know, 2 to 4 hours a day, and then all day Sunday watching this might become the best investment I ever make in my life. So I remember I actually like cut the cord. I had to pay extra. I don't know. I just did that. I don't know why I did, but I had to pay extra to them to fix the box. And I ended up paying like $250 to turn in everything early, and spent all day, every day, all day Sunday fixing this flip. Got it done earlier than I anticipated, made that money. And I have not had cable since. And not that I don't, you know, not that cable's bad, but just for me, like I have an addictive personality. If I get cable, I'm going to watch cable all day. And so I refuse to buy cable because I don't want to watch cable all day. So
that's real, bro.
To the point of like all these small things, like flipping on eBay, fixing phones, whatever it is to make that extra cash. Like I got a closet full of stuff I'm waiting to list on eBay. I've been sourcing stuff all summer from garage sales, and it's like, it's so exciting to find something for a quarter and flip it for $10, even though like it's not a big payday, but like there's just like this huge dopamine rush from finding it. That's like one of the best feelings in the world. But like, that's not something that like, I don't think flipping on eBay from garage sales is going to make me rich. I don't think it's going to make anyone really rich, but I think it's a gateway to get you some money to start buying houses, to start another business. You know, if you leverage these small things out, it's going to scale, it's going to grow, it's going to get bigger. I mean, just like you started off house hacking, now you're buying bigger properties, you're starting bigger businesses, things like that. But that small start is what you need to really start to grow something really large over the next 5-10 years.
Absolutely. Slow growth. I think slow growth. Mm-hmm. We're all super early in the process. People want to be millionaires overnight, and it's just the process at the end of the day.
Yeah, the overnight, you know, overnight methods, or the get rich quick schemes, you know, end up wasting your time, if anything. You could have been focusing on that slow growth. Maybe you spent 2 years chasing some of those get rich quick schemes or whatever it is.
Oh man,
if you would have done slow growth, you would have been, you're miles ahead of where you would have been.
that's real.
So let's talk about like the due process periods. You had talked about that Allen Park property. Just more recently, you were under contract on a 68 unit, if I remember correctly. And you guys end up backing out because the NOI was $200,000 lower than anticipated. Talk a little about that 68 unit, and then talk a little about the due diligence periods and just doing your homework to people out there that maybe haven't done a deal and are wondering what they should be doing once they get a property under contract.
Definitely. So the deal was motivated seller. He had cancer and was pretty much getting rid of his entire portfolio. And I was able to negotiate the seller to carry back a percentage of the down payment. And so it seemed like a sweet deal on paper. I mean, it was a sweet deal on paper. And there was an old school that got converted into an apartment building, and all the classrooms were essentially apartment units. It was a super cool concept. And, you get the pro forma from sellers, which, can be fudged in any way, shape, or form. In this case, the expenses were deflated and the income was inflated, and cap rate looked super nice. And it was in a great area here in actually St. Louis. And essentially, day before the inspection, during the due diligence period, you're able to get the official T12 from the seller's account if he has one. And like literally the accountant emailed me the T12 as at the time I was playing for the Lions actually. And I was driving, the mother of my child was driving from Detroit to St. Louis. It's about an 8-hour drive because literally the inspection was the next day and her family's from St. Louis. So we had a place to stay there. I get this email. I just remember like it was yesterday, like get it at the gas station. You know how fast you know the things you need to look at when you're looking at a T12. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, it's not right. So I'm like, let me pull out my iPad, pull out the iPad. I'm like, that's not right. And I'm like freaking out. I'm like running the number. I'm like, this is not right. I call like the broker and she's like, oh my gosh. And then like call the owner. And then it was, long story short, during the due diligence period, you can walk away from a property or a process. I mean, we got $100,000 was our EMD that we were able to get back, and we almost lost on whatever we would have spent on that inspection, which is going to be expensive. Thank God we were able to walk away from that property. It hurt because then I'm like, your first thing that you're doing, because all the time you just spent, the 3 months of that process of negotiating, getting it to under contract, we had 1.5 million we were coming to the table with. Now you're looking at like, okay, if I bend a little bit and give my investors 90% instead of 70%, the cash flows will still look like how they would have looked when I first presented them. If I just take 10%, or maybe if I even take just 5%, just because you want this deal to work. Yeah. And it's like, if this person's lying about something as big as the NOI, what else are they lying about?
Yeah.
And we wind up walking away from it.
Cool, man. Yeah, the saying goes out here, if you trust pro formas, I got some swampland to sell you. That's what the old, I hang around a lot of brokers, man. That's a saying they got. But yeah, doing due diligence, I mean, it's important, and hiring the right people, like you said, inspectors, having your agents and brokers, verify all the information on that pro forma, and of course, if somebody's looking at more residential, which is more what we focus on with the house hacking, like there are still things. I mean, you got to verify, you got to make sure you know what rents will be, you got to make sure you know all the expenses on the property, specifically when you're looking at house hacks. I mean, are each unit separately metered? Do you have multiple things? Are there going to be, are you going to be paying for gas for the tenants? Because that varies and it can be expensive, and you just got to verify things.
That's real. And a shameless plug for real estate agents like yourself. I think that it's important to know that, like, I didn't realize how many people didn't know that a real estate agent is free. Yeah. Like, there are a lot of people don't know that. And I like to reiterate it sometimes because it's like, because a lot of people will think like, I want to invest in real estate. I want to house hack my first property. Literally, my closest friends, should I be getting my agent? Should I be getting my license first? I'm like, no, you don't need a license. Like, you just need to find a good agent in this market who's actually going to walk you through this process. That's not going to cost you anything. And if not, if anything, it's just going to make your process 10 times easier and 10 times more frictionless and seamless. Yeah. But yeah, I had to plug that in there.
And the only reason we started this community and podcast was to be able to find like-minded people across the country and just kind of, you develop relationships with. And so a lot of times we'll get people say, hey, man, I'm in Austin, Texas. Like, do you know anyone? And we're like, yeah, Diego Corzo. Like, hey, we're in New York. Hey, we're in LA. Like, do you know people? And we're like, yeah, here's this, these people that we trust. And the thing that I relate to the most is that rock stars hang with rock stars. And if you find a really good, whether it's a lender, agent, whatever it is, the first, somebody that is really truly knows the market, is really good. The thing that they hate more than anything is like working with someone that's mediocre within that transaction. If you find a really good real estate agent, they, coming from like me, like I detest hating, using lenders that are mediocre, don't communicate, screw over their clients, don't close on time. Same thing with title companies, same thing with working with accountants, same things working with lawyers. Like they know the market. And especially if you're going with the first one, and of course I'm biased, but like finding a real estate agent that is really good in whatever area you're at, that is actually really good and is actually an investor and is actually going to know. Like there's some agents obviously that aren't good fits for investors, but if you find somebody that is actually an investor and actually knows the market, they're going to plug you in with a lot of other rock stars where you don't have to spend time meeting with 10 different lenders and figuring out which one's good, because they're all going to try and tell you they're you're going to get an agent that has done transactions with all these people and they can say, listen, this person, doesn't close on time, or hey, this one, whatever. And rock stars hang with rock stars.
No, I think that's unbiased, man. I think that that's the best piece of advice I always give people is how do I get approved for an FHA loan? How do I get a mortgage person? Blah blah blah. I'm like, start with your agent. Your agent has someone who's going to make sure this deal closes because it's at both people's best and everyone's best interest at the end of the day. And investor agents on top of that, in my own opinion, they're looking at everything with investors' eyes versus transactional.
For sure. And the number one tip I give people to find that for people listening is the quickest way that I've found, because I've started to, people ask me in different areas, whether it's around the state or in different, hey, do you know an agent? And maybe I won't. So I started doing this for clients and I've had really good luck. And so I've relayed it to others, is that call the local, real estate companies, Remax, Berkshire Hathaway, whatever it is, Keller Williams, call their office, talk to the office manager and say, hey, listen, they may have 30 agents within there. Hey, who invests in property? Who has investment properties? Who has rental properties or flips? Like who's the one doing whatever you're looking to do? And that office manager knows the entire staff. They know exactly who's flipping and who's just an agent. Like there's a place for each one. If you're looking to buy a house, you might want to work with somebody that is an investor, whatever. But if you're actually looking for an investor-friendly agent, call the office manager, say, hey, who is the one that's actually doing buy and hold long-term rentals? They'll say it's this person. Then you'll call another agent. They'll say this person. That's the easiest way to find 3 to 5 agents to interview because they're all already investing. You then sit down or have a Zoom call with those 3 to 5 people you find, and you figure out which one relates to you the most. The one that you enjoy hanging around with, the one that's best at their job. You ask them the questions that you have. I mean, we have a list of questions as well to ask, but like that's the quickest, easiest way to find investment-friendly real estate agents, in my opinion. You've done a couple of house hacks. You did that 68. Are there any other units in between there that you'd like to talk about?
That not that are going to bring much value to your audience from me. Real estate standpoint, like I said, we're essentially just trying to stay cash heavy and trying to witness and stay on the sidelines until the back end of this pandemic. From the residual effects, I think there's going to be a massive market shift in terms of what's an A market, what's a B market, what's a C market. In a lot of different places from a macro scale and then like micro in terms of specific markets.
Yeah. So let's look, you have a media company, cannabis company, real estate company, long-term, 5-10 years, like what are you kind of leaning into more? You talked about right now, being a little bit on the sidelines and leaning into your ability to make money right now. So that you have, when things turn and there's blood in the streets in real estate, what's sort of the long-term, thoughts you have?
Me as long term, I just want to be happy. That's my success metric personally. So I do what makes me happy. I played football for 3 years. I retired because I wasn't happy. Took the 2018 season off, and now I'm training to actually come back because I've got that itch to play again. I told my agent I've got 24 months. I'm gonna put my head down, and if a team picks me up, awesome. If not, awesome. with my media company. I plan on trying to build a Madison Avenue style holding company where I can buy and run businesses through my media machine long term. And just being an entrepreneur, I've realized, the realm that I'm in of doing TikTok consulting for these different companies, I've realized it allows me to get a foot in the door of a lot of places that outside of being a former NFL player, I know I can bring immediate value to any business. With the knowledge that I have on that platform, which really helps, which is just really interesting. That this just kind of got my mind kind of thinking as I formulate my plans for the future. From a real estate space, real estate's a forever like my thesis is entrepreneurship is a forever game. I think I want to get that on a t-shirt someday.
Yeah.
Real estate, I plan on buying large apartment communities, 150 plus unit apartment communities in certain markets that I want to focus on in a co-syndication type of method. Pretty much bringing private capital and partnering with experienced operators in those specific markets. I've just over the years realized I'm not the biggest fan of operations or even asset management. I want to be on the capital raising and deploying side of things. And then from a cannabis standpoint, we see ourselves either, from a 5-year standpoint, whenever it does go recreational on a nationwide basis, having a real conversation of either selling for, a 9-10 figure type of number to a larger, alcohol, tobacco type of company, or actually becoming a big time player in the cannabis space, internationally, being right on the Canadian border and then having an airstrip right in that town to supply the rest of the United States. But yeah, as long as I'm happy though, who knows? I like magic too. I could all of a sudden become the next David Blaine.
Hey man, join the Jets and Gary Vee will probably hire you to VaynerMedia.
I always put out content when people always like ask what team you want to play, like maybe Jets, and I'll always tag Gary because maybe I'll get to meet Gary.
Yeah. Maybe he'll be your boss. Maybe he'll buy the Jets. Yeah. So a question we always ask is, and we talked a little bit about throughout this show, but like, what's the difference between those that actually do and when we talk about it specifically in house hacking, like what's the difference between those that actually house hack and those that don't? Like what's that X factor that separates those that do what they set out to do and those that don't?
I think it's their intentions and their why. I think some people want to house hack because it feels cool to be in real estate because real estate's hot, it's sexy, it's entrepreneurship in a way, shape, or form. And I think a lot of those guys they don't wind up being successful because they're not in it for the right reasons. They don't realize all the stuff that comes along with it. I think the people who are successful, I think, are those natural born grinders. But I also think it's people who approach things with a level of practicality. I think a lot of people are in la la land when they think of things like, I want to buy an apartment building in Hoboken, New Jersey, or in Royal Oak, a nice fourplex, and blah blah blah. And I just found a duplex for $800,000. What the hell is wrong with you? But like in the sense of a lot of people are in la la land versus in like just a pure practitioner versus like reading Brandon Turner's book on low and no money down investing and then starting to taking the steps of meeting some people on Bigger Pockets, of finding an agent, what's the next step to start house hacking? Find an agent. Like you should have you're not even serious with me until you tell me you found an agent. They've set you up on the MLS and you're getting an email every day of every multi-unit that's coming on the market in that market. And then you're actually underwriting them. Because you're not serious if you're not doing that to a point. So I think there's a level of, I want to buy a fourplex. I drive around, every other day and I saw this property, saw that property. You're not serious at the end of the day, I think. Yeah. But it's back to exposure and education. Like, what do you know? How do you know how to get into this? Getting exposed to a podcast like this, you know that your first step is start calling agents. Like tomorrow you could be underwriting 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 properties, but you haven't called an agent yet.
Yeah. I have a theory, just about that. It's like the shiny object syndrome, right? Where people, wholesaling and then this and then that and then this and then that. And I love what Brandon Turner says is that it almost doesn't matter what your first deal is. As long as it's something to where, it's structurally sound, it's just kind of an average deal. Probably like you, I read a lot of books. I'd listened to all kinds of podcasts, Bigger Pockets being the one, most of it. My first deal, it would have taken me, I learned more in that first deal than if I had read 1,000 books. Just that experience. You start to relate things. And so if you can literally just, you find a rock star agent, you find a rock star lender, they point you in a direction, you get an inspection, the house is structurally sound, you make sure that you don't have sewer problems, this and that, and you just break even, it's a win. It's a huge win. That, and it just gets the ball rolling, and you do away with, shiny object syndrome. Nothing wrong with wholesaling, nothing wrong with buying 100 unit apartment, nothing wrong with flipping, nothing wrong with this. But if you can just narrow down and figure out one thing, and all you do is focus on that one thing every single day, and you actually execute on that one thing, like house hacking, which is why we started a podcast directed solely on house hacking, was like, listen, yeah, it's great if you want to wholesale, but, ultimately, most people want to just buy their first deal. What's the easiest way to do it? Get someone else to pay for it. So if you buy a house hack and you actually just focus on house hacking and you do that house hack, it's going to lead to so much more, whether you want to build a real estate company or not. Like eliminating 35% of your budget, which is housing, which is the average American's housing. Like if you eliminate that by having someone else pay for your mortgage, boom, now you can go focus on being happy, doing a media company, building a cannabis company, focus on playing in the NFL, going to be a pro bowler like Drew, is and was. Like, there's just like
love bowling.
Yeah.
Oh man. It's the best.
226 high score. Actually, I had my birthday party at that spot on what do you call it? That first bowling alley in Detroit.
Was it Thunder Bowl?
Yes.
I love that place, man. Dude, I won so many. I love it. I won so many tournaments there. I live in Grand Rapids now, but I lived in Centerline, Warren, and when I was bowling professionally, I moved to Detroit because it's bowling capital of the world. There's tournaments galore, dude, I spent a lot of time at Thunder Bowl.
That's awesome. That is all. Bradley, I couldn't. I couldn't agree with you more, man. I think it's shoot first, aim later. I think a lot of people are just scared to start shooting, and education you're going to get, that real world education is unreal. And I saw you quoted, not even quoted, it sounded like you were mentioning, is that Gary Keller's One Thing, the book?
Yeah, that's an amazing book, man.
Great book. Talk about reverse engineering everything to the second is one of my biggest strengths, but the hardest thing also for me to do. Like when I do it, I'm dangerous. Like when I reverse engineer that, okay, I want to raise $1 million, but not tomorrow. I want to raise $1 million over the next 4 months, but then reverse engineer it to the day, to the second. Like you can make everything so practical when that book is unreal in my opinion.
It shows that mentality is like the same at every aspect of life. Like Brad's talking about, just get that one deal under your belt, and then you're going to do more deals. And it doesn't really matter how you get started. I mean, for you got switched to tight end, right? And you talked about how you had to catch hundreds of balls over and over and over and get better and better and better. And if you didn't go through that grind of learning how to catch and all the practice that you put in, I mean, would it be a fair assessment that maybe you wouldn't have made it into the NFL without that effort?
Oh, 100%.
And that's the practice, right? Like getting that first deal under your belt, that's just practice. That's just practice for the game, which the game might be in 2 years. Trying to make it to the league, trying to become a big investor, you got to get that first deal under your belt just to practice.
I agree.
People all the time, people say, I'm waiting for the crash. That's fine. If you want to get, cheaper deals, I mean, that's the entrepreneurial spirit, buy low, sell high. Right. And then they talk about raising money. Well, I'm like, listen here, here's the deal. No investor is going to invest in you if you don't have a track record. Like if when the market's squeezed, when no one's lending, just like, if we have something similar to, 2008 to 2012, where everything kind of pinched and no one's lending money and yada, yada, like, and you're trying to raise money, like, good luck if you don't have a track record. And I keep telling people, listen, this is a 50-year game. Like, I love Gary Vee, I think, talks about it. A lot of people talk about it. You talked about it. Like, let's look at doing this for 50 years. Okay. Whether the market, crashes tomorrow or in 5 years, if you're in this game for 50 years, it doesn't matter. Okay. If you find a decent deal and you house hack and you live for free, it doesn't matter. In 50 years, your house is probably going to be worth more. And so let's build a track record. Let's be able to show people that, hey, I went through this pandemic and I was, made my payments and, we worked with our tenants, we yada, yada. And then you buy your second deal. And then all of a sudden, the market turns and you can go to investors and say, listen, I have this track record. Now I have this great deal here in front of me. I'm already an investor. Invest in me. That is way easier than someone saying, hey, listen, I've been listening to Bigger Pockets for 4 years, and I haven't done a deal yet. Will you invest with me? Well, the chances of that happening is probably slim.
Very true. Very true.
Before we wrap up, man, talk about you talked about a couple of books. We talked about the one thing. What's a book or a podcast that inspires you right now?
One of my favorite books is called The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. Really good book on giving. Giving is one of my favorite things to do. But it really breaks down the why behind giving and different intentions behind giving, and taking the selfishness, and if there is selfishness, understanding the selfishness behind giving in certain ways, shapes, or form. Really, really good book. From a podcast standpoint, I'm the same way. I haven't been listening to much. Only thing I do listen to, if I'm going to listen to anything, is Gary's, but I don't listen to it like every day. Like I'll scroll back through. I'm caught. I'm like probably 2 weeks behind, but I don't want, like, there's certain things I'll see and I'm like, I'm not going to listen to that. Oh, that looks like that's going to bring me value. I'm going to listen to that today. But besides that, that's it. I'll listen to some, what do you call it? There's a couple, just with what my business is doing right now on the TikTok side, I'll listen to there's a couple of podcasts that bring on other people essentially doing what I'm doing and the success and what they're doing with certain businesses and how they're doing it. But there's not like one specific podcast. I'll like follow certain people, if that makes sense.
Well, man, I mean, I'm just going to go out and say this has been my favorite episode we've done, just because you have this track record of just bucking social norms, and I mean, being a football player, I was just kind of, I read and watched a lot about ESPN had a 30 for 30, that I really enjoyed about I think football in specific it was, but they have a few about pro athletes going broke, and just the mindset behind it and why it happens, why it's so, I know Ryan Broyles has a true heart for helping athletes, because, it was something like, I think while he's playing for the Lions after Oklahoma, he was living on $50,000 a year. I think him and his wife had set $50,000 as their living expenses, and then whatever his salary was with the Lions, they banked everything else. Now he's, but like it's really challenging getting in environments like the NFL, like normal society, where 80% of people are living paycheck to paycheck, to live a life differently. And you have spent your whole life doing that. And I'm so excited for your podcast, because being an NFL player, it comes with a lot of prestige, and there'll be a lot of people drawn to you and your podcast and your platform. And just getting to know you and being on this podcast, I have no doubt that you're going to be incredibly successful at it, that you're going to touch a lot of people's lives, hopefully a lot of NFL players' lives, a lot of pro athletes in general. And man, it's been a thrill.
Oh man, I really appreciate that. That means the world.
Before we go, real quick, is there anywhere that people can look you up? Where would you like to send people to learn more about you?
Probably the most practical content that I'll be putting out is on LinkedIn, and that's just Hakeem Valles. Outside of that, from TikTok, I'm on TikTok and I'm posting on there 2, 3, 4 times a day. That's the real me, always. But LinkedIn is going to be your just pure value add content, whether it's about a platform on TikTok, whether it's about real estate. It's just more about the now of whatever I'm doing in a business sense.
Awesome. We'll link that in the show page and in the description.
Awesome, my friends. I really, really enjoyed the show. Thank you guys for having me.
No doubt, Hakeem. And
thanks for coming on.
Look forward to growing our relationship in the future, and best of luck, man.
100%. You guys have a good one. Cool.